on Sports!
Well, good night for episode. It's a good night for episode 9, the Mazeroski episode of Bittermen on Sports. I'm here tonight with Chris, the Georgia Peach Fletcher. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Gary, the Big Train Kin. All right? As opposed to tiny Gary Kin of a few weeks ago. Patty said I had to go in the opposite direction.
I'll take the big train. Yes.
All right. So, I'm Dave Puddinhead Finoli.
Nice.
One of the great names. Great names.
Yeah.
You know, we watched History last night, Gary. I didn't know if you get to watch it.
I watched a lot of it till I didn't see his third blast. I did see him bring Descalzo in the 7th, wasn't it? The 7th inning?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Has there ever, I'm going to doubt it. Has there ever been a game, 2 guys with 5 hits, a guy with 4 doubles, and a guy with 3 home runs? I don't think it's ever been done.
Not very often.
And Frazier hits another double. It's another double. But, I felt bad looking tonight. Tonight it's Pirate Charities night on TV. And Bob Nutting came on, who by all accounts isn't a bad guy. Okay, might not be the greatest owner, but doesn't seem to be like a bad guy. And I'm afraid to go on Facebook just to see what the sight of Bob Nutting on TV has done to social media in Pittsburgh. Oh, it's got to be a bitter time. It's got to be a bitter time there. But,
I still think that we're right what we said. Was it last episode, the episode before, maybe the episode before?
Episode 7.
But the reality is that if they take 3 of these 4, they take all 4.
Yeah.
They're still mediocre, but they're in.
But they're in.
So it's don't
forget, guys,
tough decision.
They won 5 straight over Milwaukee heading into the All-Star break last year. We had the same feeling going on. And then we saw what happened.
Yep.
So you're saying Mitch Keller could be gone if they sweep the series. Oh, man, I'll tell you. But, our subject tonight, I thought it was an interesting one. Comes from a gentleman that we all know, Dave Peghar, who helped us with our book on Lucky 21 at our Giant Eagle opening. A heck of a guy. Came up with a nice subject. He asked on our Facebook site, do you think the superstars of the early 20th century would be stars in today's game? Now, I think basically, Fletch, as you said when I broach a subject, it's going to end up being fundamentals versus athletics. A couple of things you have in there. I would agree. These people mastered their craft. You look down and they practiced day in and day out to master that craft, to become the best hitters they could. The legends, not everybody, but the legends. I think you had one thing that went in their favor. Somebody had mentioned online that don't forget they had poor equipment, poor gloves. I think that kind of added to the offensive success of them. How many outs in the outfield? We're going to see one here. No, another double, 2-0. So how many outs or long hits turn into outs because of the big gloves? Not an option there. The one thing I say goes against the guys of the early 20th century, you didn't play the best players. You didn't play the players of the Negro Leagues. You didn't play the great Latin American talent. There were some from Cuba that did get in there.
Cuba.
But, yeah, Cuba. He's Cuban. He can play. But, I think that's a huge factor. As a pitcher, you weren't going against and it ended up proving out, whereas Jackie Robinson, Larry Doby, Willie Mays, all used Major League hitting. Hank Aaron, the list goes on. So I think it's a valid point that certainly there was equal, if not greater, talent in the Negro Leagues than there were in the Major League. I think it goes against them. On the other end, somebody had pointed out, if I'm Christy Mathewson and I have access to the science that these guys had as I'm crafting my sport. Yeah, if somebody's going to go out for the fundamentals and try to be a master of them and use the science to get themselves in the best of shape, that could be quite a masterful player. But overall, would the Cobbs and Wagners and Johnsons have been as good? Probably not as good, but I think they would have been superstars. I think they would have been Hall of Famers. But I think the fact that maybe you have to judge them on what they didn't play against. I think a lot of these guys that are considered legends or greats of the games might have been very good players under those circumstances. I mean, you also have a lot of guys who have equal opportunities to hone their crafts through science in baseball that you might not have had early on. So I think those factors, to me, says that, yeah, the upper echelon of players will be great in any era. I think the same can be said of the Clementes and the Frank Robinsons. I think they would have been great back then. But I do think, taking in those factors, not all of them would be the legends that we know them as now. Fletch, what do you think about that?
Well, I agree with most of what you said. There are a couple other factors that go in there as well. One, there weren't as many slots that were open. There were fewer teams. So that helped, bring the competition up a little. Also, the angle is different. When they lowered the pitching mound, it's a little bit different, a little bit harder to hit. For me, the question isn't so much whether the pitchers of yesteryear could handle today's game. To me, it's whether today's pitchers could handle the rigors of pitching back in the day. When you think about this, guys, I'm going to ask you a little trivia question here. Who was the last pitcher to log 300 innings in a season?
Oh, that's a good question.
Randy Johnson, I'm guessing.
No, before that.
Before that. Kurt Schilling?
Nope.
I'm going to say Mickey Bullich.
It was after Loach. It was Steve Carlton in 1980. He was the first one.
I thought Johnson got close, but okay, I hear you. Okay. Yep.
39 years since we've had 300 innings.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's pretty incredible.
It is.
I mean, the other thing, too, guys, is that the players spent a lot more time in the minors honing their craft.
Yeah.
Now, because of the contracts, they can't afford the signing bonuses. They can't afford to have them in the minors for that long. So I think that fundamentally, we talked about this a little bit, David, is that they came more prepared to play than maybe some of the players that we're seeing today they're being rushed up and not really getting that sort of fundamental background that they need. But then you also look at someone like a Babe Ruth, and you think about two dominant seasons that he had, 1920 and 1927. In both of those cases, he alone hit more home runs than entire teams, which that's just hard to even fathom. And that would be sort of like a guy today would have to hit 130 home runs, to do something. And the fact that whenever he broke his record in 1920, the year before he had hit something like 34 homers. And then he boosted all the way up there. I mean, that's just phenomenal. And the fact that this guy was also one of the great pitchers of all time. I mean, he had a scoreless streak that in the World Series that it took Whitey Ford to top that. So, I mean, I think that he would have transcended it. Just his hand speed, his vision must have been something. You think of someone like a Ted Williams too. There's a guy who would hit no matter what era.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite things is someone asked Ty Cobb whether he could hit 300 against pitchers in the 1950s. And he thought about it for a second. He said, yeah, pretty sure I could. But, then again, I'm 70 years old. So,
That's right. That's right.
So I always thought that was interesting. But, you look at just some of those gaudy numbers, too, like Rogers Hornsby hitting .424 that year. When you look at the difference between them and their compatriots, some of those guys, I think, Dave, like you said, they would find a home on the roster.
Well, and you look at a guy who hits .424, I mean, which is a mind-blowing thought to all of us. Could he have done such a thing with night games? Could he have done such a thing
with relief pitchers?
With relief pitchers, exactly. Guys, I mean, back then, I don't know how many were throwing 90, but I would say it was. I remember when 90 miles an hour was considered a flamethrower and not a junk baller. But I mean, to have to face that all the time, to have to face, as you said, the amount of relievers. I mean, from what I can gather, I never had to hit at night, but playing softball, it didn't really matter whether it was day or night. But from what I hear, it's tougher to pick up the baseball at night.
It's tougher to pick up. It was tougher for me to pick up spin. I couldn't do it.
Yep.
As well.
Yep. Could you pick up the spin at night, Gare?
Not that well, which is why I'm sitting here, and why I couldn't play college baseball, but I tried my best. So no, night baseball is a much different game. I think it is a lot easier in the daylight. There's no question about it.
So, what do you think about?
I think it's very, very hard to compare. I think in the big picture, I think Cobb, Wagner, even guys like Cy Seymour, guys like that, they would have been dominant players in any era. I think some of their numbers, and particularly on the pitching side, would have come back a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you'd see 500 wins or 383, but you'd still see a substantial number. And I think in today's baseball, if they had the benefit of, in some ways, it's strange, but in some ways, maybe not for power numbers, but the bigger ballparks with bigger power alleys and huge, alleys to the fences and that kind of thing, their numbers probably would come up a little bit, some of the guys hitting today, particularly on the offensive side. And I think, the biggest change is the rise of the specialization. I don't think that anybody before probably late 1950s had to deal with all these big arms coming out of these pens like this. But on the other hand, a lot of it's straight too. I mean, a lot of these guys are throwing a ball 100 miles an hour and they're getting hit too. They're not moving the ball around. They're not pitching like we talked about a bunch of times. So, and, it's interesting. I think, Dave, you hit on it, or maybe both of you did. You read some of the eyewitness accounts. Now, they were exhibition games and things like that, but you read some of the eyewitness accounts from guys like McGraw and guys that were in the big leagues that faced guys like, Mendez, this guy Mendez from Cuba. It's clear that if some of those guys would have played in the major leagues, a whole set of factors could have been different.
Right.
I still think Wagner or those guys or Joe Jackson would have been the dominant players, but the factors are a little bit skewed. The argument against the turn of the century players in particular is two things. That, number one, up until the 40s. And then, quite frankly, I think some of the gambling thing that probably pervaded the game more than many people realize. Yeah. So some of the numbers get skewed a lot, which is the argument that I've had about the Hall of Fame with all the holier than now. Well, he gambled, so he can't be in the Hall of Fame. Baloney. Anything before 1920 is questionable until Landis came in and had to clear up the World Series. But I also think, A-Rod's been staying in 4-star hotels. He's got a guy giving him massages and all that kind of stuff. Wagner never had that. Wagner was sleeping on dusty, dirty trains in 90-degree heat, traveling to St. Louis for 2 games, then driving all the way back to Pittsburgh.
I heard about the 1910 National Enquirer version that had Wagner with several masseuses.
Good for him, but
I have the conditions about it, Honest and me.
Yeah, but here's the other thing with that.
Think about the conditions difference in the games we have now versus then.
Yeah.
I mean, people say, well, the power numbers weren't so good. Well, hell yeah, if your center field is 460 feet from home plate. I mean, no wonder those guys didn't hit the ball out of the park. And if you read the problem with all the technology today, I think, list these guys even last night like Kirkjian and Perez, it's so much greater. I say baloney. The Phillies had a reliever a couple of years ago that said it was too much mental energy for him to remember how to pitch guys. Mathewson's book is a little hokey, but read it. He spends 5 pages talking about pitching to Joe Tinker, who was a tough out for him. So, I mean, I think the attention to detail, the fundamentals, all the years spent in the minor leagues, the tougher conditions and things like that, those guys might not have piled up such high numbers. Kyle might not hit 367. Maybe Matheson or Alexander didn't win 383 because they didn't pitch as much. They'd come back a little bit. Some of these other guys would come up a little bit, but some of the power numbers and strikeouts and all this nonsense we see in the game now would come way down if the conditions were equal. The trouble is that they're not. But anybody who says that those guys couldn't play, I totally disagree. Cobb, another story about Cobb beyond Fletcher's. I can't remember if it was in the 20s when Ruth was hitting all the home runs. Cobb, like any great athlete, was a big ego. So somebody said, well, your game's over. The game's changed. He goes, okay, I'll show you. And I think it was in a doubleheader against St. Louis or somebody. I think he hit 4 home runs in a doubleheader. So, I mean, a lot depends on what the conditions are at the time. The game was played a lot differently then. The parks were different. The conditions were different. The travel was horrendous. He did not have the deep bullpens, but you had far better starting pitchers and far better managers who didn't rely on video technology to correct some of their errors. They had to do it in their head. So
the other thing about it, Gary, too, they were playing with a baseball that did not fly out of the park like this one did. It wasn't tightly wound like the one we have now.
Completely correct. Right. Correct.
Right. And that's another factor that you have to take in. Until 1920, that was a big deal. And to me, that goes on to the credit of a Wagner, of a
that's my view.
Lajoie,
yeah, I agree.
I mean, to have to deal with those. On the other end, when Cobb hit those 4 home runs, trying for the homers, did it destroy his swing?
My biggest fear about Monday night, I don't like the fact that he's in that because there has been some documented, evidence of that being a problem for a little while.
Poppycock. I call poppycock on that.
I don't know. Pedro Alvarez was never the same, fellas, after that. Never the same.
He was not. And there was one other one. Who was it? I can't remember who it was. I mean, I hope Bell just goes out and has fun, but I certainly hope he doesn't try to hit 50 of them because what's the difference?
Here's my thing. If you look at the list of guys who participated in this, and we'll get back to our conversation in a second, Ken Griffey Jr. didn't destroy his career. Frank Thomas didn't destroy it. Rarely has this happened. Does it get in some guys' heads? Probably.
It could.
I had the dear Bob Picozzi, who's a bit of a pompous guy. We'll say that. I'm going to say that. I promised myself I wouldn't say worse. But he points out Aaron Judge had a bad month. Well, Aaron Judge had a good year, and then Aaron Judge had another good year. So, if he had a slump, I'm not sure it was because of the home run derby. Because when you take so many swings in a year, I can't imagine 30 bad swings are going to destroy your career. And if you look at the people that participated, it bears out. But
it's true.
Just a poppycock thing that why do we have this discussion every year? In the great TV show that I know you love, Fletcher, and I'm assuming you did, Gary, the home run derby.
I love that one. Yeah, I love that one.
Maybe some of the worst dialogue ever between an athlete and an interviewer.
Yes.
Didn't that make it special, though?
It did. And the thing that those guys are most worried about? Blisters. Because they didn't wear batting gloves then. It was off season. They weren't in baseball shape. And that was the big problem. The cool thing was that it was played in L.A. in a place that was a replica of Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
I thought that was a classic show. And I went back, and none of them had bad careers after they were hitting in the home run derby. I think this is something the press brings up to get press during the All-Star.
Yeah.
My thing is go out. If you're Josh Bell, go out, enjoy the damn thing, hit the bejeezers out of it, and, you'll be okay. Trust me.
Well, I agree, and I agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, I guess it's selfish because, last night on that broadcast, some of the stuff they brought up was amazing. Only Gehrig and Ruth have had more – Stargell actually had more homers and RBIs at the All-Star break in 71, which I guess when I think about it was accurate. But he's on a pace for more extra base hits than only 2 guys. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's literally amazing on a team that really doesn't have a lot of protection around him, let's face it.
And he didn't have a great month.
He did not.
June was not a great month for him. And the fact that he's still with that kind of numbers is just And the fact that last year, guys, he hit 12 homers last year.
Yeah, I know. It's remarkable. It is remarkable. Yeah.
More than twice the amount. I mean,
I guess I just want to see this keep going to this point, because he seems like a pretty decent guy too. Like when they talk to him, at least it seems from here. So,
Hey, guys, I have a question for you. We talked about baseball. What about the other sports and some of the old timers being able to play today? I mean, football is a little bit different because of the sheer size of people. But, you think about basketball, I think Bill Russell's still going to be a hell of a player. I think that he has that whole winning attitude. I think that Chamberlain maybe, LeBron, they say, is maybe the best athlete amongst basketball players right now. I think Chamberlain would have been every bit his equal. He ran track. I mean, he was just a phenomenal specimen, 7'1", 250 pounds, something like that. So yeah. I think he played. I think Bird would have even been better. I think that Magic would have been great. The one that and this is going to sound like heresy, I don't know that Michael Jordan translates as well, and I'll tell you why. So much of his game was based on that whole isolation clear out, and they're not playing that right now. So would he be the greatest of all time? I don't.
Well, I think in the first place, you mentioned guys, and I agree with you, they'd be great today. I think they're the exception rather than the rule.
Right.
I think the game was the speed of today's game
much more
would render most of these players useless, and the athleticism would. But basketball is a sport that lends to that, whereas baseball, that's a great thing about it is you can imagine guys in other eras play.
It's still the hardest thing to do in sports, guys. Hit a round object square with another round object. It's hard to do.
I'm telling you, I don't hit golf balls as much anymore, but anytime I do, there's a batting cage behind it. I go to the slow pitch to make myself feel better, and then at the end, there's an 80-mile-an-hour fastball cage. I've been going there for 40 years, and other than hitting my pinky as I was trying to swing it, that's the only time I've ever touched the ball. It is the toughest thing in sport to do. I think that transcends. I think in hockey, yeah, they were more physical then, but the speed of today's game would render a lot of those guys useless.
But they were also using wooden sticks without curves, a lot of them too. Keep that in mind as well.
They were. I mean, they were great. I'm not saying they weren't skilled. They weren't great. But I think speed in basketball and hockey would just render some of these guys useless. I think in football, you have to consider, do we play with the old rules? Do we play with the new rules? If we play with the old rules, you know what? There were a lot of scary guys in the 60s and 50s, 60s.
Especially if you played with 60s rules where that you could clothesline somebody,
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And again, I mean, these guys, it was a simpler game. I mean, I'm sure a lot of time there was the plays drawn in the sand, but you know what? They were tough. They were gutsy.
Quarterbacks called their own plays.
And yeah. I mean, they had the ability of a coach. And I think maybe they transcend a little more towards being able to survive in the new era. But yeah.
They also would have had the off-season training regimen now if the salaries were different, and they could do all those things. I mean, these guys, even Jim Palmer, when he was pitching for the Orioles, he had an off-season job.
Yep.
A lot of these guys, they couldn't afford to be a full-time athlete.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Major factor. Every game, major factor.
Jim Palmer did, but, did everybody have the look in the jockey underwear of Jim Palmer? Might have had some Ken dolls. That's something you don't want to show off.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
I think the facts are, though, is the expansion can't be discounted, though, a little bit in my view, though, guys. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
You've doubled these rosters, and as big, as powerful as some of these NHL forwards and defensemen are, they would not have made the NHL in the 6-team era, and I'm not sure some of them would have made it in the 12-team era, 14 teams. So,
they wouldn't have, but if you had the better players of today in hockey versus the better players in the 6-team era. I think the players of today would pretty much fill those rosters 90%.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Today from the 90s, the last 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking from the days of Mario and Gretzky.
Yeah. Yep. No, I don't disagree. But I also think that, when you start making the pool that small, and that's a baseball thing, going back to the baseball, 16 teams. Now we have 30, perhaps soon to be 32.
Right.
Yes, there's been advance in nutrition. Yes, there's a full-time job now. Yes, there's all this video equipment. Yes, the developmental programs are better. We don't just discover somebody in the woods of Nebraska now. All that's true. But your pool of guys is a hell of a lot less. So it brings back a little bit, to me, the competition factor from where we are now. I mean, I think baseball and I think, to me, baseball, boxing, horse racing, and golf pretty much look, although the philosophy change may be different, the size of players may be different. Those sports look the same.
Well, golf, the equipment, you can't even, the sweet spot on those old golf clubs, it was tiny. Oh,
yeah. Now it's a big fat thing with all this technology and stuff like that. But the games themselves, your skill set, take horse racing out of it. Your skill set's the same.
Could you imagine Palmer with one of those drivers?
Oh,
all of those guys. Think about that for a minute, right? Like, how good would they be? Kind of bringing that back, like versus now. But
Orville Moody, can I say that name? Orville Moody.
You do that.
Okay, I wanted to bring that in. I have a note here. It says, work Orville Moody into the conversation tonight. So I thank you for bringing up golf, Gare.
I'm just saying, if you look at the games, like if you looked at the games.
U.S. Senior Open in 1989 at Laurel Valley, he was the winner.
Okay. I was wondering who in the heck is Orville
right
Moody?
Here. Right here. I'm pointing to my notes here. Here, I'm going to put them back here. You might not be able to read them, but it says Orville Moody right here. We'll bring it a little closer.
And that was all unscripted, too. Amazing how we're getting to know each other too well, I guess.
People don't understand. We don't rehearse for this. This is all.
It's amazing.
Natural.
We're in tune.
Where's Gordie Howe fit in this?
But if you looked at a football game and you looked at a basketball game and you looked at a hockey game in 1960 versus now, they look like two entirely different forms of entertainment. I think in baseball and in golf and in boxing, it kind of looks the same.
It does. But
that's a factor in whether guys can compete or not to me, too.
Gordie Howe is on your defensive line at that point. He's a grinder.
Yeah.
I say
he probably would be.
Yep. That speaks volumes. In a way, maybe Hull becomes the greatest player of that era.
Or Bobby Orr.
Transcends. Bobby Orr transcends. Yeah. I stand corrected. Bobby Orr would be the greatest.
I still, the thing about Bobby Orr that still just blows my mind is leading the league in scoring.
Yeah. In an era where that didn't happen. Defenseman didn't play that way.
In that era. Exactly.
Yeah. It's just insane.
It is. They were good offensive defensemen, but nowhere near the kind of numbers he posted.
I think that's in. I think so. Basically, I think the ones probably out of everybody we're talking about who would transcend the best from one era to the other would be the dead ball players. More the hitters than the pitchers. Because I think to hit in a world like that between 1900 and 1919, if you were the great hitters of then, I think you could hit in any era. I truly do.
Don't forget the spitball, fellas.
Yeah.
And those balls that were so dirty by the end of the game, picking them up would be very difficult too.
Yeah. No.
There's just a lot of different factors in there, but it's great that baseball, more than all the other sports, you can have these discussions.
Yes.
Because it has such a rich history.
Lends itself the best.
Particularly around numbers. It is the numbers sport, without question.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. You don't have – the game is so different. Football and basketball probably being the most different of the two.
Yeah.
But the game is so different in the other three sports. You could look at you could look at boxing, and I agree with you, Gary. I think it was a much better much better talent 40, 50 years ago and even beyond.
Definitely.
But it's turned into the MMA. It really has turned into the MMA.
That's right. It's split now among two different businesses. Correct.
And what was the beginning? What was the beginning? Let me ask you guys a trivia question. What was the beginning of the MMA that you could see something twist to the MMA? It wasn't the beginning of the MMA, but that you could see starting to twist towards there.
To me, it was the late 90s when it got on Fox or whatever it was on, or that network. To me, the business started to change. It really did. I mean,
well, you're probably right about the MMA, but I'm going to that you're not right about my question. Fletcher.
Okay, misunderstood it. What could I see to change it?
Randall Cobb for 20. I don't know.
Okay.
And kickboxing in the late 80s that I used to stay up till like 3 in the morning to watch. That was the beginning when it started changing to the MMA.
Okay.
That was a wild sport.
I missed that one. I missed that breaking pitch big. So.
Oh, man. I was setting up. If you can see here, work kickboxing into the conversation.
Well, on mine, I've got Randall Cobb right here.
Tex Cobb.
He thumbed me, okay? He thumbed me in the eye.
Yes,
Tex Cobb, and remember that fight with Larry Holmes over Thanksgiving? We were in college, all of us.
Yeah.
All I remember was Coach said, "Oh, this is awful. The people who run boxing, this is a disgrace." Remember that? And then he retired after that.
He retired right after that fight. That's right.
Where Holmes killed him on that night after Thanksgiving. It was horrendous. Cobb had no business being in there.
Cosell never would have made it in the dead ball era. I'm going to say that here.
He would not have.
Transcend.
Wasn't enough drama for him.
He doesn't transcend, my friends.
No, he doesn't.
Oh, man. But we're going to stop for a little break in a couple seconds here. But when we come back, we got a couple good subjects coming up. I'm sure we're going to talk the new world of the Penguins.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Interesting day in the NHL.
I like what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in New Jersey, Fletch, that you feel might be interested in some of these?
I think that maybe one Gary Kinn might have something to say about this.
Yeah.
Is there any woman in New Jersey who reminds you of Gary Kinn?
Oh, it's got to be double jeopardy for her now because she has more than one Matt Murray on this team. That's got to just drive her apeshit at this point.
How is she dealing with that?
I don't think she realizes it yet. So
you going to tell her at the break?
Probably not. Probably later on.
Oh.
You're a good husband, Gary. You're a good husband. When I found out, because Viv is just as bitter as Patty is about the whole, Peduto's got to get rid of that beard. I don't know what you think.
I don't want to see him eat ice cream.
All right. But anyways, I did mention there was a second Murray up there, and it did upset Viv very much.
I didn't have a discussion about it, so I guess I'll have to come down that avenue. So.
Well, I think it would be great for Sullivan because if ever he's asked who's starting tonight and going, he says, Matt Murray. Done.
Murray's starting. I'm going to buy him. I think they both wear number 30. I think that would make it very special.
Yeah, mystery every night.
There a rule against that?
Oh,
is Gary going to be our walking rule man?
I think he will be.
What
Okay.
will it be? I'm sorry?
Gary, is there a rule? Is there a rule about two players wearing the same number in the NHL?
I think it's prohibited. So I think you're going to have to – I don't know if they can do 30A and 30B maybe.
There you go.
Or maybe like in college football, they just can't be on the same.
True, you two guys wearing the same number.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Or
I
they
think
could be like Jackie Robinson Day, and they can all wear the same
All
number.
wear the same number. Yeah. Right.
you guys know Joe Magnu of Playboy fame.
Sure.
Oh, no. Yes.
So Magnu, who does the cameras for AT&T Sportsnet,
Right.
tells me that is he hates that day more than any other. And it has nothing to do with the celebrating Jackie Robinson, but it has everything to do with the fact that I don't know these players' faces enough to be able to survive having everybody with a 42 on.
Yep.
Peduto I could pick out. I know you're looking towards him, Fletch.
He's looking a little bit like a Yukon Cornelius with that beard.
Oh, if you're going to have a rain delay, Pirate Charities Night is probably the way to do it.
Oh, for God's sake.
Although they're starting to pull some of these things out of the bag, I'm thinking you need to stick them in the bag. Just let it go. Just let people guess what they're going to be getting.
Just give everybody a whole shit ton of eye patches. Make them wear them both.
That's good. That's good.
Does Ron King look any more uncomfortable talking to Bill Peduto right now?
So you're saying if Rob King puts an eye patch on, he'd feel better?
Here's the thing. In his earpiece, he's hearing stretch, stretch. And he's like,
Oh man.
I don't know.
Maybe I got to sign up for maybe I got to sign up again for extra innings so I can watch all this stuff.
Oh, please. Let's talk about bike lanes. I'm sure that could bring out about a half hour from.
oh, bitter now.
That's a bitter mode on. I think Viv hates the bike lanes more than Matt Murray.
Well, I hear they're going to be called the Matt Murray bike lanes at some point.
That is got the same kind of. Here they went crazy with the bike lanes, and now our streets are even more congested. So yeah, that would be another. That would be as much as the hate for Matt Murray. Yes,
All right.
I agree with the latter part.
All right. What's Pat? Before we leave, what's Patty making for dinner tonight?
We already ate. We ate some tuna fish quickly because I got home a little late before the show. So we're gonna make sure I'm always ready to fight as soon as the bell rings here, Dave.
All right. So we're good. I didn't see any tuna fish pictures tonight. I do.
Now I managed to. I'm gonna be on camera, so I can manage to get it all off there.
All right. I was gonna. Whoa! What a rainstorm! Do you see that going on in Pittsburgh?
No, we're gonna get one later apparently again.
Oh, we're
What's
getting one.
I washed my car yesterday, fellas. This one's on me.
There you go.
Well, I got a nice dab of bird shit on the back of my car, so this is a godsend. But we will see you guys in a few for our next segment after our break here.
Sounds good.
All right.
Round.
Unlucky 21 at your local Giant Eagle and bookstores. It's the greatest book you're going to read. Buy it.
All right. We are back. We're back. We're not watching Pirate baseball at the time because it is raining and raining heavily in Pittsburgh. Girl sitting in her seat with wet hair, so I don't know if that's going to signal the return of baseball, but I don't mean to compare this because they do a wonderful job for charity, but I'm buying the Penguin bag every time.
I'm with you.
Seems like it. Excuse me. Gary, what do we got going on this week?
In terms of, well, I mean, I don't know. It was, for those of us who pay attention to hockey 365 days a year, I thought yesterday was a pretty interesting day, to tell you the truth. And I think the thing that surprised me a little bit is all the talk about the Battle of Pennsylvania. Those two organizations had minimal effect.
Yeah.
Really weren't a factor at all in it. I mean, we probably don't need a goalie, but Bobrovsky going to Miami, that's a huge move. Stunned at that. Organization's never won anything. I know money talks, but that stunned me.
Who did Miami have in goal last year? I'll call
Luongo retired.
I hate this state thing.
Luongo retired, so that's part of the reason that they did it. And I think there's been some talk in the league that franchise is in pretty deep doo-doo. You know, it's not drawing anybody. Nobody's paying attention. Typical South Florida. You need to make a splash. It's a pretty good team, but nobody's paying attention. This might be a way to do it because, I mean, a guy might be the best goalie in the league when it comes right down to it.
Right.
So, and I thought it was amazing how much Columbus lost. Duchesne, Panarin, and him in the same day. So it opened a door for the Penguins and a few other organizations, I think, because clearly you never know, but it's clear that there's something ain't right there in that locker room because all three of those guys leaving on the first chance. And I know money talks again, but
did the Rangers have a big day? What do the Rangers prospects look like going?
I mean, I think they picked up two of the best players in the draft that nobody talks about. I mean, Panarin's not a big rig, but he's one of the most skilled guys in the league. Every place he's been puts up 80 points or more. Great skater. And I think, you know, Trouba, the guy that they picked up on defense, was a guy a lot of people coveted, and they went out and got him. You know, a lot of teams could have used him. So I mean, I think they had a winning day and a winning week or two. And I think honestly, I think the Devils did too. Lover hates Subban. He can be a game changer. He's not the same player. They get him and they get Simmons only for 1 year, but they get some size. I think New York won. And I think a lot of other Dallas's move is very interesting because they pick up 2 veterans at pretty big money. They got close, but they pick up Pavelski and Corey Perry, 2 guys who've had some down years lately. Another interesting move. I think they felt they got so close if they would have had that. They might have been the ones lifting the cup versus St. Louis because they gave St. Louis a pretty rugged series in that late playoff series. So sure. Very interesting day. So those are my moments week. And honestly, I'm not as big of an NBA fan, but all that movement, I mean, Chris, you could probably speak more to that. It was a stunning day there too with all that movement.
There was such a high percentage of players that are eligible to move at this point, and it was just the whole balance of power shifted. It was interesting to see.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, it's kind of neat. As a baseball romantic, you certainly love stories of the Brooklyn Dodgers. Hearing it, I think it's kind of cool to have Brooklyn in basketball all of a sudden move from an embarrassment, put together a new front office. A new front office that basically retooled that team quickly. I mean, it was a playoff team with really no superstars, and now all of a sudden they've got superstars.
Bang!
You know, I mean, one obviously won't be playing this year.
Right.
Kyrie earned a bad reputation in Boston, but you know what? In Cleveland, he was one of the top 5-6 players in the league, and a pivotal part of that championship. So. I don't know if he's the cancer in the locker room people claim he is, but he sure as hell has a track record of doing well.
Yep.
But your boys surprised me a little bit, Fletch, opening up gobs of free agent money, but so far unable to close the deal with anything.
Yeah, interesting, but also I thought it was interesting that Anthony Davis waived what was due to him, so they picked up another $4 million to do some things with under the cap.
I was stunned at that. Nobody was expecting that.
Yeah. That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money.
That says something. Even if you're making a lot of money, that's still a lot of money.
Is Leonard still a possibility there?
I mean, he met with the Clippers, he met with the Lakers, but the interesting thing was that he requested meeting with Magic Johnson.
Yeah,
which is illegal in NBA. That is not a legal thing, but I thought it was an interesting thing.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Yeah.
Very surprised.
Well, I mean, Bus didn't play, and this other GM didn't play. Johnson did. He's one of the NBA's greatest. So, I mean, I can see a little bit of his view on it. May not be the most popular thing if he signs there with some of those people, but I can understand his thought process.
What happened with Magic and the Lakers that I thought there would be a little bit of a cooling off period before something like that would happen. But
yeah, I thought that was interesting. I think you're right. I thought it was a very quick NBA free agent season.
7 hours. It all happened in 7 hours if you read ESPN, which I didn't realize a couple of them happened because obviously we got to work. But it was stunning to me that some of the movement of all this big, and I don't understand the Horford to Philadelphia either. I don't. Now they're huge.
Yeah,
but it's still a weird team.
I don't know. I don't like that lineup.
Neither do I. So, yeah.
No, I think that's a front office that has a lot of talent, but not a lot of thought process in what they're trying to do there.
Certainly feels that way.
Yeah, I mean that would be a damn shame. But how do you guys think the Penguins ended up looking?
Why don't you guys go ahead and I'll tell you my view of it.
Well, I thought yesterday's signing brought a good energy guy. I don't know whether you overpaid for him or not. Maybe. I don't know. I think, unfortunately, Kessel had worn out his welcome here. We all figured that was going to happen. But, Dave, here's the thing. They're right up against the cap, and they've got 2 guys that they have to take care of. So they need to take care of the first Matt Murray, and they need to take care of Schultz too.
Yeah.
So I think there's more that's going to happen because the Kessel deal freed up about $1.8 million or so.
Yeah.
But He's right on the edge of that salary cap, and he's got some guys he's got to take care of. So let's see what happens. Gary, what do you think?
I mean, I like Tanev. I mean, he's a bumper car, and I think they need more of those. I mean, I think all we have is McCann, and all they have rather is McCann and Hornquist really to play that way. Tanev will add to that. Not a big goal scorer though, and he's not a real big guy either. I still think we're just so undersized.
I agree.
Those guys aren't a dime a dozen, but I mean, I think he'll be okay. He'll be a popular player in Pittsburgh. He's a balls to the wall kind of guy, creating havoc, turnovers. But I don't think we've got a long way to go to fix some of the. I mean, I would have tried to look at making another big colossal deal because Lee stayed in the island, but he only signed for $7 million. The Flyers threw money at this guy Hayes, who's a role player. They're paying him $7 million. Now, that organization doesn't have it. Both organizations at Philadelphia Winter don't appear to have a clue. But Lee signed for fairly conservative money in today's NHL. You're telling me the Penguins couldn't have offered him $8 and he wouldn't have went there? I mean, I think I know Rutherford's working hard. Kessel wore out is welcome, but I just don't think they did enough. I'm not ready to declare, at Armageddon, but both the Flyers and the Penguins, they seem to be kind of running in place or going a little backwards. Some of these other teams are adding stuff and moving ahead a little bit again, is the way it felt to me.
Well, I like the fact they have a guy who's going to block shots. I like the fact they have a guy who's aggressive, who's going to hit.
Yep.
And the cost, I mean, you're averaging $3.5 million. I know Bonino might be a little better offensive threat, might be a little bigger, but he gets $4.2 million. So I don't think it's out of the realm for that type of player. I think the length of the contract was a little surprising.
Yep.
I think but I think Kessel jerking him on, and again, I don't want to say jerking. It was his right not to go to Minnesota.
Yep.
He signed the contract. But that could kill him because you had a team that's willing to accept Kessel and Johnson.
I totally agree.
Could have freed up some money for others. I think they got younger. I think they got faster. I think they got bigger. I don't think they got better offensively.
Well, I mean, Galchenyuk's an interesting story because he was a highly regarded guy in Montreal early in his career.
Right.
And he really was. He played well. Then he kind of tailed off and he never really recovered and they gave up on him. Now, the Canadians, he was the key part in the trade for Domi. So a lot of people in the league still are high on him. But he just couldn't get it together again in the West last year. So, but he's got a lot of potential. He's not a 50-goal scorer, but he's a guy who can put up 50, 60 points and play both ways. So it could work out to be a real steal at the end of the day.
Well, I think here's the other thing that happened with that. I think that Rutherford was tired of seeing so many shorthanded goals.
I don't blame him.
They went looking for someone to try to address that need. The other signing, guys, that's not really being talked about, and of course, now that I'm talking about his name is escaping me, but the signing of another assistant coach, someone who had worked with the GM in places before. So that puts a little bit of heat on Mike Sullivan because now that Rutherford has one of his guys in an assistant coaching position that, if Sullivan's unable to reach the players like what seemed to happen toward the end of the year last year,
Yep.
it could be a change. There's a little bit more pressure on him now.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And that's not always a bad thing.
No, I don't think so.
People work under that all the time. Not a bad thing. But I'm not sure they're Stanley Cup contenders at this point.
I don't think so.
I actually love the kid. Did quite a bit of research on the defenseman they got in the Kessel trade.
Coyotes.
And I think he could end up being the key to the trade.
He was a first-round draft pick, wasn't he? He was a first-round draft
pick. He's a little smallish, but he's fast. He's a good defensive player, and he can move the puck. Yeah, but he'll play defense too. He's not going to Letang you. I verbed him. I think that's when you make it. That's when you make it in professional sports. When you become a
so
verb.
guys, does Letang stay with this team at the beginning of the season next year? Will he be on the roster?
If Schultz is healthy, I'm looking to move him if it's me. I mean, I think for the right deal, it may not be popular out there, but for the right deal, I'm doing it.
I think he's looking to move him. Again, you have the no trade clause, plus, who's going to take him at this point? He looked He had a good season last year, but then he looked awful in the playoffs. He makes a lot of bad decisions defensively. We talked here before. I'm not a fan of his. I've never been, as some others have. Good guy. Not gonna criticize his effort. I think he just makes a lot of bad decisions defensively, and he's not good enough offensively to cover for it.
And he's hurting him financially. That's another big contract in there for what you're getting now.
Yeah.
You're right. Good guy. There was times his career was electric to watch. Yeah. Not so much anymore. He does make a lot of bad decisions. He's settled his discipline down a little bit, but I think his best days are clearly behind. He's had a lot of punishment with the stroke, with the neck surgery and stuff like that. Sounds cold and heartless, but I think his best days are long gone. So I think a team that's close, Dave, that a lot of teams need that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Not a lot of teams have that guy that can really kind of break out himself and handle that power play quarterback spot. And Sam can shoot the puck when he's right too, when he feels like playing. A lot of teams can use that. So I think it's going to be a team that's going to be close, that has some room to pay him. Penguins going to have to eat some of it, but kind of like we did with Kessel, if you can move him for the right combination, I'm doing it.
Yeah, so. I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Mr. Fletch, what influenced you this week?
I've said on this show a few times, particularly with the NBA, that it's a better league when your teams like the Lakers, like the Celtics, when they're competitive. I'm going to contradict that now with baseball because, ladies and gentlemen, the New York Mets are a mess, just an absolute mess. They have a skipper, Mickey Callaway.
Yeah.
He's got to have some incriminating pictures. That's the only thing I can think.
Yeah.
What a bad first-time manager. And they've got Jim Riggleman right there. All they have to do is just move him into there.
Yeah. But they love him. Don't they have like the 20-year-old GM?
Oh. And then, guys, I have to say I'm enjoying this because I hate the Mets. I really do. It goes back to those smug teams of the 80s and early.
Yeah.
Just don't like them. But, then this week we celebrated another Bobby Bonilla day where, they paid him yet again.
$1 million.
That contract. But it hit a new low this week. They're honoring the 1969 team, okay?
Yep.
They do this video tribute. And they have a section of in memoriam for people who died. They put two guys
on there alive.
Who was it?
Crack research work that was. Crack research work.
Jim Gosger, I think, and Jesse Hudson. Unbelievable. And then we remember. No, you don't. Because if you remembered, you'd see when they were alive.
Crack research teams there, yes. PR department really working hard.
Some intern went bad, but that's just, to me, that sums up what this Mets franchise is all about. I mean, they're a financial disaster. Unbelievable. How would you like to be that guy's family? Oh,
can't imagine.
Right here. I'm right here.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Hello, still alive here. Yeah, just absolutely unbelievable.
I have more affection for the Mets than you do because that was my first team. My first game was at Shea Stadium, so I have a little more affection for them. But to me, the whole tragedy of that time, the man who is the greatest player in your franchise, and it's not like, okay, well now he's the greatest player. He's always been the greatest player.
Yeah.
Maybe you built that, from all accounts, a magnificent stadium. Why wouldn't you have honored him when he was at first? I mean, it's a shame that he can't enjoy the honors that he richly deserves that now they're giving him because he's ill.
Yeah. I mean, it's just early on, I liked those early Mets teams. I was a big Tom Seaver fan. I mean, no, we talked about pitchers earlier. Today, he would still be an ace. Just absolutely tremendous talent.
Definitely.
Also, just the right attitude. This is a guy who wanted to win, too.
Yeah.
Didn't like when he pitched against us, but I definitely liked him. But, it's just, when I read about that, I'm thinking, Jesus, this is, we bitch about the Pirates. No, the Mets are worse.
You'd think they'd have more access to finances with their TV contract and such than the Pirates would. And yet I feel bad for the fans. They have a good fan base, and it's got to be every bit as frustrating, if not more.
Oh, it has to be more.
It's got to be more. I mean, you got so much more available to you, the money and the attention. Yeah, I mean, and two tremendous arms.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely phenomenal arms.
Yeah.
So
how is this guy still managing? I don't get it.
I don't either. I mean, I've talked to a couple people, and I've read, I don't know if you guys remember David Diaz, who was a Duquesne man, and he's a devout Mets fan, and he kept saying, this has to be the end. This has to be the end of him. And, of course, it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, all this technology, all these research available to you, internet, everything else, and you do that when you're celebrating your glorious moment. You put two people on there that are deceased and they're not. That's inexcusable. If I was running that organization at top down, so we're looking at everything, this is absolutely inexcusable. Period.
I mean, I can envision the Pirates doing that and having Derek Bell and Randall Simon on the in memoriam video, but
Bell in particular, yeah.
This is one of the most iconic teams in baseball history, the '69 Mets.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the ultimate embarrassing.
I mean, them and the Knicks have a lot of similarities lately. It's a circus act.
Well, you would have thought the Knicks would have done something in free agency. I mean, they cleared out the space.
Nobody wants to go there.
I mean, I don't like Smith at all, but he keeps carping about that on ESPN. A little bit I've seen where it's clearly that's it's got a scarlet letter. Nobody wants to go there.
It sounds like it's a place where the owner probably needs to sell the team, because he doesn't seem like an owner people want to go play for. And I mean, that's where it begins. You have to believe in the owner's vision for the future of that franchise. And that's why people end up where they end up. And I think what the changes they made in Brooklyn, I think are panning out, and people believe. People believe that the Nets are an organization that'll do what they have to win.
Well, I mean, that was the biggest kick in the face yet. I mean, they've been a poor stepsister from the time they were over in the Meadowlands. I mean, even the Irving days, going back that far. Not anymore. I mean, those two guys go to the Nets, not the Knicks.
Yeah.
That was like the ultimate kick right in the rocks.
Oh, man.
You're not talking McKee's rocks there, buddy.
No, I'm not.
No.
No.
Home of.
Paul Spadafora.
Yes.
I was going to say Bill Rainier, but Paul Spadafora too.
Close enough.
Well, okay.
No.
Billy Elmer.
Paul Spadafora, Bill Rainier, back and forth. You get a pillow in the bag. If you buy the bag, the Pirate Charities bag, it's a pirate pillow in it, in socks.
There you go. That's a reason to do it.
Compare it to 10 bobbleheads, an autographed puck, and an autographed jersey with the Penguins. And a Steve Blass autograph, which, I love Steve Blass, but there are like 10,000 Steve Blass autographs everywhere. The man's never going to be having an auction raising $4.5 million by, selling one of his autographs.
No.
I like it. I probably have about 10 myself. But yeah, I can say my favorite Pirate. In my lifetime, probably my favorite Pirate. He was my favorite pitcher growing up.
Did he wear number 28? Did he wear number 28, guys?
Yeah,
I don't remember. Why does the guy working in the luxury box wear a Steve Blass 1971 uniform? Can you guys help me with that? You ever notice that? Watching a game last night on TV, the guy working in the box right behind home plate wears a full Pirate uniform. That's number 28 on the back.
Next to Babe Adams,
it's this year because it's
the 1909 series.
Is that why? Perhaps. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
His Game 7 in '71 was probably the best pitched Pirate postseason game.
Yeah.
Other than Babe Adams.
Yeah.
So I mean, that to me, I love when I interviewed him. He told such great stories of.
Yeah.
I mean, stories you expect guys to talk about, the pitches he threw, the thought process. He gave this great story. He said, in the 7th inning, I stepped off the mound. I looked back, and I just wanted to take it all in because I knew I probably would never be in this position again, pitching in a Game 7 of a World Series. And I just wanted to make sure I had the memory. And I'm getting goosebumps now telling the story. I thought it was one of the great thoughtful answers of a question I had ever had.
Steve Blass may be the easiest interview I've ever had. You ask maybe 1 or 2 questions and he's off. He's gone.
Goes.
And one of the things he talked about, similar to what he was talking to you about, Dave, is that whole iconic thing of him bouncing over into Bob Robertson's arms. He told me he practiced that since he was 10 years old. That when he was out in the backyard, he was dreaming that he was pitching in Game 7 of the World Series, and this is how he was going to react.
Oh man, I'll tell you, I mean, he is truly a class guy. He's truly, I mean,
Pirate for life.
It's an honor to have him as part of the organization. It has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been a part of that organization for so long. It's amazing. Think about that. It's amazing.
Since 61, 60.
It's amazing.
Yeah, this is 59. Part of the organization because this is his 60th year.
60 years.
Yeah.
Just don't see that in anything anymore, in particularly professional sports.
He's like our Vin Scully.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Absolutely.
Pretty much.
They played a clip of him during an argument between San Francisco and L.A. when Mays was at his height when they were out in California. And just listening to him describe it, what was a pleasure, Vin Scully. That was a pleasure. I mean,
one memory I have of Vin Scully living in L.A. was I was watching a game, and I could tell there's just something that wasn't right. I mean, Vin was not his usual self. And it was in about the 7th inning where he came on and talked about how he just found out that before the game started that Don Drysdale had passed away. And he couldn't say anything about it until Drysdale's widow was notified. So here he is broadcasting this entire game with his, the guy who was his broadcast partner for all those years, knowing that and still going on with the game. That to me was just incredible.
I had heard that story. I didn't hear the broadcast, but I mean, guy's a legend. Guy's a legend. And
I mean, the thing with Scully that most never gets talked about is I thought at the end when he was on by himself, he talked a little too much for my taste. But that's a minor criticism. But he was so enthusiastic from the opening pitch to the end of the game. Didn't matter what the score was, no matter what the game was. Couldn't talk enough about the history and the stories he knew about people. You don't really see that anymore. A lot of these guys have great voices. They either try to be too humorous, like I felt that crew was last night on ESPN. I don't know about you guys, but I've had enough of Kirkjian. I've had enough of the drama that Perez makes. The other guy trying to be too comedian. It's not a comedy show. It's a baseball game. And I think Vin was none of those things. He would just talk about the game itself. That's all he talked about for 3 hours or more.
And he was the poet laureate of baseball.
He was. And I'm the opposite. I love that at the end. In fact, I first got MLB TV. I mean, I love the Indians, but I didn't get it because of the Indians. I got it because I could listen to Vin late at night and just listen. I didn't even care what the score was because, I'm not a huge – I don't hate the Dodgers, but I'm not a huge Dodger fan, so I really didn't care what's going on. But I was just mesmerized by the way this guy told the story. And he was telling the story every night. But, an aged broadcaster, but I'll tell you, my moment of the week was in the opposite end. I got an HBO Now, so my daughter could watch Game of Thrones. And I went to I love the sports documentary, 20th century sport documentaries that they produce were incredible. And I was watching John McEnroe and Borg, Fire and Ice. And, they talked about McEnroe at 18 being the youngest qualifier, and then he ended up in the semifinals. And they talked about how that made help soccer or tennis boom again. Well, this week we had a similar story. A young 15-year-old Floridian, ranked 313th in the world, by the name of Corey Graf. Youngest woman, and I've got to assume player. I don't know what the record is for the men, but at 15 years old, she qualified. 15. She had just taken a math test in high school and came to Wimbledon, won 3 matches to qualify. And she played Venus Williams in the first round. Well, youngest qualifier by far. You expected her to get her butt kicked and go back to Florida and go back to her high school and whatever. She beats Venus Williams, 6-4, 6-4. And in just one of the most incredible upsets. And, you know, she checks 2 of the boxes. One of the reasons tennis isn't booming is because this is the biggest country. And to get a boom, you have to have Americans, particularly likable Americans,
Yep.
to make the thing happen. And she's a breath of fresh air. And, you know, just a great story. And, you know, now I'm paying attention to Wimbledon for the first time in years. And she's going to play tomorrow in the second round. And you really hope she at least makes it to the quarters to make this great story and hopefully begin just a great career. But what a story for a sport that really needs a lot more of that.
Yeah, some juice. Yeah.
Absolutely. But we're going to go into a very quick prediction round. Fletch, what do you have on the docket today in prediction world?
Well, guys, the term hero is bandied around a little too much these days for my liking, but we will get to see a hero in action this week, fellas. July 4th, it's Joey Chestnut Day, fellas. Last year, and this makes me feel better about myself. I don't feel like I'm such a pig whenever I Last year, he set a record with 74 hot dogs.
Wow.
I'm already
talking like he's going to break that record. But, guys, here's my prediction. He's not going to get 75, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it's going to be humid in New York. That's going to disrupt things because he's going to have to balance how much he hydrates. If he drinks too much water, that's room he won't have. So I think he's still going to win. I think that 74 is still safe.
I think he should have to drink the water that he dips the bun in.
Oh, I'll tell you what. I've said this before. I would not want to be that man's doctor or his plumber.
No, neither one.
I thought you were going to say colon.
Oh,
Neither one.
no.
You'd want to be
and I know who else is rooting for him, Dave.
Who?
You want to take a guess? Mom on the right will be rooting for him.
Mom on the right. Oh, he's got
All-American Day, All-American food. Probably right.
If you have Mom on the right, you are not what? What are you not? You're not a – come on.
Oh, there we go.
Not the Busher of the
We
Week.
haven't pulled that out yet this week.
You have the support of Mom on the right. You are not the Busher of the Week. Mr. Gary, what do you
She still hasn't responded to my Facebook request, guys. I don't know. If anyone out there can help me on that, I'd appreciate it.
She's going to make us a complete square one day. That's my prediction. All right, Gary.
I'm not quite sure how to respond after that one. But I don't know. I have one prediction. It's the MMA side. This guy, John Jones, tough personality to take, tremendous athlete. One of those guys could probably do anything. Fighting a dangerous opponent again. He's wiped out 3 guys in a row. I got a problem with the GOAT term, but this guy probably is. And I think he's going to continue that legacy. So my prediction is a lot of people are going to buy this again because it's him, me included. He's going to win again pretty easily.
Okay.
I think the other thing that's interesting, a prediction I will make, one thing was mentioned in a boxing broadcast this weekend, gentlemen, which is interesting. Gennady Golovkin, who's one of the best fighters in the world, signed with DAZN after Canelo Alvarez did in anticipation of a third fight being made. Alvarez is saying, not so fast. I beat him twice. You know, I'm the one who's really the key guy in this network, and he's talking about fighting much bigger guy by the name of Sergey Kovalev, a Russian. Very hard puncher, very talented guy, decorated Olympian, just like Golovkin, but much bigger. Seen a lot more of this in boxing these days. Guys moving up in weights, taking guys on a weight or two. I think it's going to happen. that would be one to pay attention to because they're both tremendous athletes, decorated amateurs. I think it'll happen. I think there's enough money to be made. Kovalev was promoted by Main Events Kathy Duva. She does do business with Eddie Hearn and De La Hoya. I predict that fight will happen in the fall, and that will be one we should talk about. So,
all right. I like it. Well, my prediction is going to be about our favorite women's sports heroes in this country, the U.S. women's soccer team. Alex Morgan scored a great goal today to win in the semifinal. Exactly. And she mocks her British opponents by faking the cup of tea drink. I love it. People are pissed off at this. See, I've read so many, our ladies are embarrassing. They're having fun. They're having fun.
They're young people, yeah.
Go for it. I mean, you're winning. You're the best team in the world. You're playing either the Netherlands or Sweden. I don't give a hell who it is. You're going to beat them. You're going to beat them well, and you're going to kick their ass, and you're going to win a fourth World Cup. Okay? You're going to win the fourth World Cup. What can you do to embarrass the Netherlands? What goal celebration can you do to embarrass the Netherlands?
You could pretend you have wooden shoes. I don't know.
Right?
Okay.
With them hats or something.
You can go like this to them. Maybe.
Yeah.
I like it. You could. Yeah, you get the chicken Swedes. That's a possibility. But I like it. Play it up. Enjoy yourselves. Win your cup. And screw anybody that doesn't enjoy it.
Well, Dave, I will say this. She's not afraid of the limelight or the camera. She is creative. And, I for those who love soccer, they probably would disagree with me about this, but that sport also needs some extra attention.
Amen, brother.
Sports fans. Yeah. She's getting it. She's getting it with the stuff that she does, both on the field and some of the stuff. So I'm all for it, too.
Which is great.
She didn't go full Chad Johnson. That's the good thing.
That's good in any case. Yeah.
We all want a little Brandy Chastain at the same time, too.
See, if you read my notes, it would be Fletch bring up Brandy Chastain and Chad in the same sentence. So. All right, gentlemen. Next week will be our 10th.
They said we wouldn't make it.
So they did.
They were wrong.
And they were wrong. So
let's.
I don't know what we're going to do, but we'll do this. Let's drink. We're not doing the other thing, okay? We're drinking tea, okay?
Tea.
Oh, by the way, fellas, this week's beer is Penn Kaiser Pills. Salute.
Yeah, keeping it home.
More fan mail for you, Fletch. More fan mail on the way.
All right, brothers. You have a wonderful July 4th weekend.
You as well, both of you gentlemen.
I'm going to be wearing no dogs next week on my hat.
Joey Chestnut.
Joey
Be thinking about you, Chris.
Okay. If Joey wins, we're going to be singing next week. Okay. I don't know what.
We should all eat a hot dog in honor of his continued
we'll
dominance.
Sing the Oscar. I wish I were an Oscar Mayer wiener.
I love it. That's what we're going to do. 2 verses if we get 75. All right, brothers. Have a good holiday.
You too. Nice evening.
All right.